Hello, Star Wars Action News listeners. Recognize the voice? This is Nathan P. Butler of StarWarsFanWorks.com and the Star Wars Timeline Gold, bringing you a very special Expanding the Universe EU report. Visual this time. And you will notice by my lips not exactly matching what I'm saying, the washed out color and, well, the shoddy camera work. This should give you a pretty good idea of why you usually only hear me in audio. But to celebrate Star Wars Action News' 200th episode, I decided to do something that Arnie had suggested a long time ago, and that is to give you a little bit, a teeny smidgen, of some background on the creation of my Star Wars Tales story, Equals and Opposites, from Star Wars Tales 21 and Star Wars Tales Volume 6, in preparation for the upcoming release of the comic pack, with Kyle Katarn's action figure, his second ever, and of course the Yuuzhan Vong action figure, the first ever for that particular Star Wars race. What I've done, with my own sound effects, is to give you some material here directly from what I call The Binder. Capital T, capital B, The Binder. When I got hired by Jeremy Barlow to write the story for Star Wars Tales, I decided to keep track of the entire creative process, from our original emails up through the finished product and the solicitations in things like previews or the StarWars.com website, DarkHorse.com, and so on. So I got this giant binder, you can see the depth here, a giant binder full of stuff. But I pulled out a few specific examples of how the creative process behind a story like this actually works. Basically, from start to finish, there's really only 5 people involved outside of the people who have to approve things at Lucasfilm. That's Jeremy Barlow, the associate editor, James Reyes, the artist, Michael Atiyeh, who does the colors, Michael Heisler, who did the lettering, and then there's me, the writer. So we start out with a story pitch. An early story pitch. I know the focus isn't all that great, but an early story pitch. Of course, the pitches have to go back and forth with the editor, and basically all that a pitch is a general synopsis of the story, but it's a little more detailed than you might imagine. This is just page 1 out of several pages for this one little 14-page Tales story. Eventually it goes back and forth, and if you get a chance to get any response at all, instead of just having the pitch dumped outright, usually it comes back with some comments. In this case, this is one of the latter versions of the pitch. Once we change the title from Flair for the Dramatic to Equals and Opposites, and you'll notice that there are segments in red. Those are changes that I made before sending it back off to Jeremy Barlow. So we've got several steps just within the pitch process itself. Then you move over to the actual writing phase, and a comic book script is written somewhat like the way you would write a movie script. Frankly, you don't have a set format for them. This happens to be the format that we use for Star Wars Tales. In each case, you have a page number in this case and how many panels, are on each page. Detailed descriptions of each panel. This is one panel right here. Panels can be short. The bottom panel just takes a couple of lines, but the opening, bigger panel, establishing shot, inside the security building. Kyle has just rushed inside the building and is looking around for Jan. There's a look of shock on his face as he reacts to something in front of him off panel. It's Jan, but we don't know that yet. Etc., etc., etc. It's all laid out very well. Or for instance, take one of the more iconic panels of the entire comic story, panel number 5 from this page, page 10. Kyle's on the move, coming right at us, taking the fight to the Vong. He's vaulting over the overturned desk in front of him, pivoting on his left hand. His lightsaber remains in his other hand, fully ignited. Kyle, not likely! I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have said it like that, but you get the gist. At this point, the script has to go on to James Reyes, the guy who did the artwork. And of course, the first step is black and white, what it's sometimes called virgin artwork, leaning up again to that iconic leap made by Kyle over the desk that a lot of people have used for images of him in the time since, mainly because of that cool reverse lightsaber grip. This is, by the way, the costume you'll see on the comic pack. Eventually, that artwork will have a finished color form thanks to Michael Atiyeh. But while that's happening, there are other steps going on with this original black and white artwork, because they have to figure out where to put the words. Words, 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 as Shakespeare would say. So what they do is they'll go through and essentially mark out, I guess in Photoshop, where different word balloons are going to go. For instance, Kyle Katarn's not likely is dialogue number 5 for the page, and you see the little circle pointing to Kyle to denote that that's where it should go on the page. This moves on as it goes to the letterer, who would be Michael Heisler, and you'll see them superimposed here. You've got the original red outline, but teeny tiny, the actual dialogue there, the little box saying not likely. They eventually remove the red, and you get just the finished black and white artwork with the dialogue. Not a big change from the original black and white artwork, because the dialogue balloons are relatively small in this particular page's case, but it can substantially change the look of a page, depending on how much dialogue there is. Finally, they merge the two together, and we go from having a black and white page with a bunch of dialogue balloons, and a color page with no dialogue at all, to a finished looking page that has all of the dialogue plus color artwork. So this is sort of the final combination of work between me as the writer, James Reyes as the artist, Michael Heisler doing the lettering, and Michael Atiyeh doing the colors. Of course then, through Jeremy Barlow, it eventually sees print in Star Wars Tales. And in this case, Star Wars Tales back in the day had 2 cover variants each. So you have the original Star Wars Tales art cover, as it's often called, which, by the way, for a long time had an incorrect symbol behind Vader. It was the Old Republic symbol instead of the Imperial one, almost right up until release. Or you have the Star Wars Tales photo cover. Basically just 2 variants, nothing different on the inside, basically a way to sell more comics. And of course, if you're lucky, if you write a Star Wars comic, eventually it'll find its way into either a trade paperback or an omnibus. The trade paperback in this case was Star Wars Tales Volume 6, with some of that really good Stormtrooper artwork. But of course, this is a comic that is huge, and it takes all the way up until the very end of the comic to reach equals and opposites. Unfortunately, at this point, I can't share with you the idea of how it goes from this to being an action figure because, well, the action figures aren't out yet. But keep an eye out very soon in June or July for the release of the comic pack of Star Wars Tales number 21 with this cover here, with Kyle Katarn dressed in this outfit here, and a Yuuzhan Vong warrior, this ugly bugger right here. For Star Wars Action News, this has been Nathan P. Butler. I hope you found this marginally fascinating, and if not, well, at least I hope you see why I don't usually do video. Now back to Arnie and Marjorie.